never told us who built it. The house stood on a small hill ringed by trees. Its walls were made of sawn logs and its roof was covered with bark shingles. It had covered porch with polished branch pillars. There were windows of blown glass that were as clear as a pond in winter. It was of poor materials, and yet no one could deny it was made with care. Every plank sanded smooth, and not a nail out of place. There was no path to the house. There was no outhouse that could service it to. No one knew what the inside looked like. No one lived there. Yet every week we cleaned it. When you hear the word cult, you think of doomsday. We were not obsessed with that things as trivial as the end of the world. We never talked about fire, brimstone, or when God was going to burn the sinners to bone, saving us and us alone for his band of immortal worshippers. All we talked was the house and how to keep it clean. Our leader, Mike, wasn't crazy at all. All cult followers say that about their leaders, right up until the poison passes between their lips. But I don't believe Mike was actually insane. He did horrible things. I have had time to come to terms with that, to realize the depths of his depravity and his evilness. But to us, he was soft-spoken, kind, and generous with his time. He didn't ask for money. He refused the bodies of the cult members offered to him in lust. He was still married to the wife he had met 40 years ago, decades before he had found the house and created his cult. She made cookies on Wednesdays that she shared with children. No, the only thing crazy about Mike was how much he cared about that house. In his stories, we were told he found it while backpacking across the mountains. Mike said something drew him to it, something deep within him. He went inside and saw many wonderful things. He never told us what, but he didn't have to. Whenever he talked of the house, or of going inside, his face would take on a sheen and illumination. Younger me never thought to explain away the phenomenon or question it. I believed with a simple faith. Such was the power of house. When Mike spoke about it, he glowed. It was not long after going inside that Mike started to preservation community and create his own cult. And with that, our cult was born. The police in their filings determined our group to be a sex cult. I think that's oversimplistic. Yes, everyone who could was either making or having babies. This was not for fetish reasons, but it was purely economical. To have more people, more children meant more hands to clean and preserve the house. It might have been wild and orgy-like when Mike brought the first group to the settlement back in 1974, but by the time I was born, sex wasn't a passion affair of the heart anymore. It was science. Couples were chosen at the beginning of their childbearing years, around 15, and they were selected to minimize the inbreeding quotation of the community. Each couple was expected to produce a minimum of one child a year. The resulting children were divided into 3 groups: the cleaners, the gardeners, and the orphaned. 10 days after a child was born, Mike would take it from its parents. He, his wife, and an attendant would go into a special part of the woods. Mike would meditate, trying to discern what group the child was best suited to. Sometimes it took minutes, other times it took hours. Once it took him a full day to decide. I often volunteered to serve as the attendant that would accompany them. I would watch Mike make his decision. I liked to wonder what he was thinking, trying to predict what group he would choose. All the babies looked the same to me, small and soft. I never was able to guess right, even though I tried for years. Once he had decided, the sorting would begin. If the child was to be a cleaner, the attendant would provide Mike an eyedropper full of bleach. His wife would hold open the baby's eyes. Mike would then put 3 drops into each orb. The process would be repeated until the child had gone completely blind. There was a 98% survival rate. Once they were blind, they were proclaimed a cleaner. If the baby was to be a gardener, Mike would be given a long hypodermic needle. His wife would secure the child's head and Mike would rupture each of the baby's eardrums. Again, the process would be repeated until the child was completely deaf. This process was notably less traumatic, and the child would usually stop crying once they were given a few sips of morphine laced with milk. If a child was selected to be an orphan, they would be taken away and given to the nursing mothers. Their selection ritual would come at a later date. While cleaners and gardeners were given back to their parents, those who gave birth to orphans would never interact with their child again. When an orphan was sorted, we would spend the night in mourning for the parents, for the child, for the community. Sometimes children would be born naturally blind or deaf. Mike called this a great mercy. These babies were seen as special and given the moniker of self-selectors. I was a self-selector. I was born deaf and sorted into gardeners only 8 days after my birth. My parents were gardeners. They were grateful to have a child born into their own sorted group. The gardeners and the cleaners had little reason to speak to one another. The cleaners communicated vocally while the gardeners only used ASL. For gardener parents, to have a cleaner child was akin to seeing the child die. It did not happen frequently, but it was not impossible. Beyond the needs of infanthood, each group trusted the parents of the others to care for the children they were unable to care of themselves. Such a thing was the only link between our two groups. All my friends were gardeners. We were taught hand signs from the beginning so we could speak to each other. At school, we were educated in botanical matters and taught how to tend a lawn, weed a plant bed, and mix the correct quantity of fertilizers and soil. We never knew what the cleaners were taught, as they used no visual aids. We would see them gathered and huddled at their class space near our camp. I would see their lips move and I would wonder what they were saying. Once we had turned 10, we were deemed old enough to be put on rotation. Every week, 20 names would be drawn by Mike from 2 large wooden bowls, one for the gardeners and one for cleaners. Those whose names were drawn would be washed clean at sunset, then initiated with blood drawn fresh from Mike's arm. They would then ascend the hill towards the house and begin the ritual of care. The cleaners would enter the house one by one, cleaning supplies in one hand while they grouped into the darkness with the others. The gardeners watched from afar until the door was shut. Then once it was full dark, we would turn on our camping headlamps and make our way to the lawn. We would begin accomplishing the many chores Mike required us to do. The older ones took the responsibility gravely, but not us, the younger ones. We felt no danger from the house despite the repeated warnings. We didn't just ignore the rules, we flaunted at them. A rule oft repeated to us gardeners in training was to never look inside the windows of the house. Whenever we would question why, most would just more forcefully repeat it again, like an order. Others would try to explain it, but their explanations would be confusing and did little to quell the curiosity of a child. So naturally, we made a game of all of the nonsense that was told to us. We often speculated what could be in the house. Many of us had grown up in tents and could only imagine what these things called rooms even looked like. The adults would not discuss the house's interior with us, and so we imagined it to be continuation of the forest where we lived, with plants and growing on the ground and water running in the streams through the lengths of it. One child, Patty, claimed to have snuck inside one night. She claimed she saw great trees and that everything was larger on the inside than out. For weeks she had held captivated by her stories, making us beg for more. I, along with my friends, loved the tales and believed them. Wholly, actually. Believed feels too weak for a word. I had hoped beyond hope that they were true, but they were lies. I was 14 the night Mia and I were selected for gardening duty. I remember that night with exact clarity. I will for the rest of my natural life. Mia was my friend. We were born in the same week. That day, sunset came and we were washed. Mia splashed me with water and I did the same to her. We giggled as we were reprimanded and hid our smiles as we were entombed with blood. We climbed the hill, singing to each other our secret jokes and not thinking much of the work that needed to be done. Once the cleaners had entered the home, we turned on our lamps, still joking to one another in the dark as we pulled weeds and cut grass. At around midnight, the moon disappeared behind a small layer of cloud. The small amount of silver illumination it had provided vanished, and we were in darkness. Our headlight beams cut cones in the darkness, and still we were unafraid. We were beneath a window, planting new wild flowers in the bed beneath it. I was in the middle of singing to Mia how Danny, another gardener, had tried to kiss me after our class the other day, when a small silver of golden light filled the air, blinding us. Mia and I looked up and saw that the curtains in the window had been pulled apart a fraction of an inch. We had heard of the things like this happening, but we had never experienced it ourselves. We never knew that there were lights inside of the home. I was breathless with awe. We stood and looked, and the glowing slice of several seconds, just basking in the radiance. It was my idea to peek inside. I told Mia we could see if what Patty said was true. Mia was a non-believer of Patty's stories, and that was enough to sway her to my side. I could tell she was nervous. Mia liked to joke, but was easily frightened by new things. We had an argument over who should be the one to actually look. I suggested it, but there was a nervous excitement that kept me from pressing my eye up to the glass. We were breaking a rule after all. We played a game of rock, paper, scissors to see who would look. That felt fair to us. I won, Mia lost. Mia looked at me, and I thought for a moment she wouldn't do it. But she stilled her face and gripped the edge of the window with her fingers. My heart thudded in my chest, and I almost told her to stop. I wish I had. I wish really I had. Mia checked to see if none of us was watching, then put her face directly into the thin beam. She peered into the house. For 10 minutes she did not say anything. After the first minute I asked a question. She ignored me. I tried to get her attention, and still she kept her eye fixed on the window. I started to panic. She had never behaved like this before. I grabbed her arms and shook her muscles. Were like an iron, and she was frozen in place, staring. Something had gone wrong, horribly wrong. I tried to pull her away from the window, but she just gripped tighter to the sill. I pulled, and the light cut off. Someone on the inside had closed the curtain. Mia collapsed and fell back on top of me, and I rolled her off to see if she was okay. She was staring off into the distance, her mouth open agape and her pupils large. She swallowed a few times, then blinked. She shook her head and sat up. I asked her what she had seen, what was in the house. She never answered me. She got up, turned, and went down the hill. The next day Mia was not in our usual class. I asked my teachers where she had gone. They did not want to tell me, but I kept asking until they were forced to answer. I was informed that Mia had volunteered to become an orphan. She was to be given the next week. While we had no fear of the house as children, we did fear the orphan. We did not discuss it among ourselves, but the adults were often talked of them quietly, wondering who was next for the ritual of giving. The ritual process was relatively simple. Once a month, after the cleaning and wedding, and the gardening, and the cleaners would ascend to the hill. They would gather in 2 large bodies, forming a path up to the threshold of the home. Back at camp, Mike would go to Offord. He would ask for volunteers. If there were none, he would personally select someone among their ranks to be given. Before I speak of what happens next, there is something you must understand. To us, the Offord were not human beings anymore. They were Homo sapiens in species only. While their genetic code might have been the same as mine, they possessed no other qualities that would suggest life in them. From an early age, they were kept from all forms of knowledge. They were not taught to speak, they were not taught to read, and they were not taught to write. They were fed twice as many meals as the rest of us, double portions. Volunteers would tend to their every need, keeping them docile and receptive to orders. They behaved as animals, just as Mike had designed them. Most did not live beyond 15, sacrificial lambs to be called. After selecting an offer for the giving ritual, Mike would take them to the place of sorting. It was fitting that the ritual of giving should be begun in the same spot where they were chosen all those years ago. Mike would take chloroform that he had purchased on one of his many trips to town. He would force the offer to take several deep breaths. Their eyes would go glassy and their minds would move somewhere beyond the realm of mortality and into the void of unconsciousness. Then, with a knife, he would cut out their tongue. The wounds would be cauterized with a repulsive branding iron. The lips would be sewed together and pasted over with a combination of paper mache and wax. Once the offer awoke, they would be in great pain. We would give them a morphine injection to help them relax. They would return to their docile forms, almost like nothing had happened at all. Once they were prepared, Mike would personally lead them up the hill, through the groups of gardeners and cleaners. They would go slowly, like the guests of honor at the funeral procession. After ascending the hill, they would stop at porch. Mike would then lead the offered onto the porch and to the front door. More morphine would be administered if they tried to struggle. Mike would then open the door and lead the offered inside. He would let go of them, step out and shut the door from the outside. Then we would wait. Mike claimed this was to see if they would re-emerge, but they never did. Seeing the offered enter the house was the last we would see of them. For an hour we would stand vigil outside the silent house. Then one by one we would leave. A month would pass and then the ritual of giving would take place again. Month after month after month, year after year. Mike allowed for any members of his community to become an offered if they so desired. It was seen as a form of self-selection. It was rare, but it happened. Mia took this option. The entire week before she was to be given, I couldn't bring myself to see her. I felt too much guilt, but I knew I had to visit her one last time before she entered the house, before she vanished forever. So when the time came for the ritual of giving and Mike asked me to be his assistant, I reluctantly said yes. I had only seen the process once before. The offered had been a larger body. After the surgery he had woken in rage and pain, so much so that he had torn up the tree. I was afraid this would be a similar experience for Mia. The night of the ritual, Mike and I went to go get Mia. When we arrived at the offered part of the camp, she was sitting by herself. The other offered gave her a wide breath. They seemed scared of her. Mia's face glowed with strange light. The same light Mike's face had when he spoke of going inside the house. It was almost like she was still looking in that goddamn forsaken window, taking in what she saw there. Mia jumped to her feet when she saw Mike. She smiled and made her way over. For the first time in my life, I saw Mike look uneasy, but he took her hand and led her to the place of preparation. On the way, I tried to get Mia's attention. She would not even glance at me in my direction. Any hopeful thought I had was gone. I wanted to help her, but she didn't even notice me. Mike didn't even have to drag her like some of the offered. She skipped to the surgery table and laid down with a smile like a lunatic. Mia took in deep whiffs of the chloroform and went to sleep. She was still grinning even when we pried back her teeth and took out her tongue. We branded the wound and steam came out as the blood vaporized. We sewed her lips with a hot needle and plastered over her mouth with paper mache and wax. I went to wash my hands as I thought that would be the end of it, but Mike turned his attention to her hands. I signed to him, asking what he was doing. He explained that she could not be allowed to speak. Mia could speak with her hands as well as her tongue. My entire body went cold as I understood what he was saying. I swallowed back tears and got to work. Removing Mia's hands took longer than anticipated. We cut away the flesh, broke the bone, and cauterized the veins and arteries. We sewed the leftover flap of skin over the wound. We wrapped white gauze over each stump, which quickly grew red with blood. She had lost a lot of it, and I was worried she would never wake up. But Mike assured me that she would. They always do. As we waited for her to wake up, Mike and I sat in silence next to each other. I started to cry. I leaned over and felt Mike's arms wrap around me as he comforted me. I confessed to him what happened at the house. I told him about Mia looking into the window and how I was the one that I told her to do it. Mike listened. He didn't seem angry, only sad. Once I was done, he asked me a question. Did you look inside? I told him no, I didn't. He asked another question. Did she tell you what she saw inside? No, I told him she hasn't. Mike nodded, then looked at the grass. I could tell he was thinking. It was the same expression he had when he sorted the babies. You are telling the truth. He signed to me, otherwise you'd be begging to go inside as well. It took a long time, but I finally gathered enough courage to ask Mike a question that had been burning inside of me ever since Mia volunteered to be an orphan. What is in the house? What made her do this? Mike looked at me, and for a moment I thought he would answer. Then he turned away. After a moment he signed, when it's your turn to go, I will tell you. I didn't talk to him anymore after that. Eventually Mia woke up and we gave her the painkiller. She didn't need it. Her eyes were bright the moment she rose up from the table. Once the shots were administered, she got up without any help and set off on her own path and direction towards the house. Mike and I followed behind her, up the hill, past the crowds. They all watched us solemnly. I could see Mia's parents sobbing when we passed them. They tried to sign to their daughter, telling her to come back, to not go, but Mia didn't even glance at them, like a zombified trance state that she was in. Mia and Mike reached the threshold. I found my place in the crowd. I watched as Mia stopped onto the porch and stopped at the looking back at me once and then giggling and going inside. Extra painkiller was offered, then she refused. Mike led Mia to the door and opened it. Without even looking back, Mia stepped inside this time. Mike closed the door and we waited. After an hour, people began to leave. After another hour, only me and Mike and Mia's parents were left. By the 5th hour, it was only me and Mike. I was tired, but I didn't want to sleep. I kept hoping that Mia would emerge, that the doorknob would turn and she'd come out excited to see me and ready to put aside whatever craziness had gotten into her head from looking in the window. But I knew it was false hope. She was gone. She was truly gone. Mike left to give me some alone time with the house. I cried and walked on back to the flower bed where Mia and I had only a few days ago been dreaming about. What was inside this cursed house? I looked at the window, and even with all the horror of the past day, I felt myself wanting to look inside. I wanted to see what had made Mia so willing to give up on life itself so she could be there with it. But the curtains were drawn tight, so I turned and made my way down the hill. I don't know what made me do it, but halfway to the camp I looked back. Something was written on the window. The letters glinted in the moonlight. They must have been written in the time it took me to get to the bottom of the hill. At first I thought words were written in black. I made my way back up to the house and they became more and more red with each step. They were written in blood, Mia's blood. My heart stopped. When I read what they said, the words spelled out my name and then a message. Mike lies. Room is evil. The next day, I snuck into Mike's car when he left to go to town. I didn't tell my parents or anyone. We were never forbidden to leave. It's just no one ever did. No one wanted to do. Only now do I realize how strange that sounds. Once we arrived in town, I got out of the car and ran into an alley. The buildings were huge. I had to stamp down my awe. I had never known you could build things so tall. When I looked back at the car, I saw Mike staring in my direction. He looked sad. I didn't wait to see if he would chase me. I ran away as fast as I could. I don't think he even tried to follow me. The police found me. I told them about Mike, the house, the community. They were never able to find it, even though they tried several times. I was never able to give them the right location. Eventually, I was reintegrated into society. I went into a public school, spent time in the foster care system. I'm grown now, and the world has changed a lot. I have changed too, but I never forgot the house, the window, and the blood glistening in the moonlight. Yesterday, I was looking on Google Maps for the forest where I used to live. I had done this many times before and found nothing. I never really believed it would work, but this time Something caught my eye finally. A peculiar shape, a small circle of light green with a dark speck in the center. I zoomed in and my heart skipped. That roof, those shingles, the house. Young me wanted to stay away for good, but older me has had time to think about Mia, about what happened that night when she looked in the window. That light we saw has festered itself into my brain. Those questions still remain. What did Mia see? What was in that house? And why did Mike lie about it? Why did Mike lie about it? Maybe if I go back, I figure it out. Mike owes me some answers. He owes us everything. This amazing story was written by Lovely the Scared Scholar. Make sure you go follow him. I will leave a link to his Reddit, and also go follow his r/agoraphobic archive. He is a lovely writer, upcoming writer. He has several stories which I'm hopefully going to try to work out getting permission for. And if not, still give him the love he deserves. He's an upcoming talent, and make sure you read his other stories. And also remember, we are doing his birthday subathon and donathon soon on Twitch. Make sure you go follow me on Twitch for streams of Valorant, Marvel Rivals, horror games, and even live narrations. Also, make sure you go follow TikTok for more clips, Twitter for more news, and also we will drop a link for the Discord server for our community, so feel free to join by accepting the rules and the roles. And remember to always take care of yourself and never blindly follow anyone into any belief or cult, or the house will come for you.